Waitress laughed at black customers' tip. Then he bought the restaurant. Marcus Daniels adjusted his non-designer watch as he entered Riverside Bistro. Despite his casual attire, jeans and a simple button-down, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged anywhere he chose to be. At 42, he had the weathered hands of someone who had worked his way up and the observant eyes of someone who noticed everything. The maitre d' sized him up with a quick, dismissive glance. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" "I don't," Marcus replied evenly. "Just one for lunch." A brief hesitation. "We'll see what we can do." The maitre d' led him past empty tables near the window to a small table near the kitchen door. Marcus noted the pattern, without comment. The pristine window seats were filled with predominantly white patrons, while the few other black diners were clustered in less desirable locations. He'd developed a second sense for these arrangements over decades of dining out. His waitress approached with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name tag read Emma. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting he might be in the wrong place. "I'll start with an iced tea, please. No sugar." Marcus kept his voice pleasant. He'd learned long ago that displaying any emotion, particularly frustration, would only reinforce preconceptions. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer the lunch special?" Emma suggested, not bothering to mention what it was. "It's more straightforward." Marcus felt the familiar weight of assumptions settle between his shoulders. The implication that he wouldn't understand the regular menu, or perhaps couldn't afford it. "I'll take a moment with the full menu, thank you." His response was polite, but firm. While waiting for his drink, Marcus observed the restaurant operations with a professional eye. The service flow, the kitchen timing, the staff interactions. Beneath the upscale veneer, he detected inefficiencies and tension. Interesting. Emma returned with his iced tea, placing it on the table without meeting his eyes. "Have you decided?" "The coq au vin, please, and a side of the roasted Brussels sprouts." A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "The coq au vin is quite sophisticated." "I'm familiar with it," Marcus replied, handing her the menu. He watched her walk away, noting how her demeanor transformed as she approached a table of white customers, her smile widening, her posture softening, her attentiveness immediate. Some things never change, he thought, memories surfacing from his childhood when his parents had saved for months to take the family to an upscale restaurant, only to receive service that made it clear they weren't welcome. His food arrived with minimal interaction. The dish was decent but not exceptional. The sauce too thin, the flavor profile unbalanced. Chef with potential, but without proper direction. Marcus assessed automatically. Throughout the meal, Emma checked on surrounding tables repeatedly while managing only a cursory, "Everything okay?" at his. Marcus ate thoughtfully, making mental notes about the restaurant's atmosphere, food quality, and service disparities. When the check came, Marcus calculated an 18% tip, fair for the service received, and paid with cash. As he stood to leave, he caught Emma examining the payment. She snickered to another server, whispering something that made them both laugh. Marcus paused by the door, watching the interaction. The familiar burn of indignity rose in his chest, but alongside it came something else: resolution. He pulled out his phone and made a note of the restaurant's name, Riverside Bistro, worth investigating further. The downtown office of Daniels' hospitality group reflected Marcus's approach to business, understated elegance that prioritized function over ostentation. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath gray afternoon skies as Marcus reviewed the portfolio of potential acquisitions. "Riverside Bistro's financials just came in," said Aisha, his chief financial officer and longtime friend. She placed a folder on his desk. "It's struggling more than we thought. Third quarter in the red." Marcus opened the file, scanning the numbers. "Location's prime. Concept is solid. What's the problem?" "Management, from what we can tell." Aisha leaned against the desk. "High staff turnover, inconsistent quality, declining regular clientele. They're losing about 8% year over year." Marcus tapped his pen against the folder, memories of yesterday's lunch experience surfacing. I was there yesterday. Aisha raised an eyebrow. Incognito boss mode again? Just lunch, he said, though they both knew his casual visits to potential acquisitions were never just anything. Food was mediocre. Service was... He paused, considering how to frame it. Revealing. Aisha's expression softened. That kind of revealing? Marcus nodded. He didn't need to elaborate. After 15 years of friendship, Aisha understood the particular tension in his jaw that appeared when he'd encountered prejudice. You know, we have easier targets, she said gently. Places without that kind of baggage. Marcus stared at the city below, thinking about his journey. From washing dishes at 16 to cooking line at 17, working through culinary school, taking every opportunity to learn the business side of restaurants. The extra effort he'd always needed to exert. The additional credentials he'd had to acquire. The flawless track record required just to be considered equal. My father used to say there are two ways to handle closed doors, Marcus said quietly. Walk away to find an open one, or become the one who holds the keys. He thought about the waitress, Emma, and her dismissive laugh. About the black chef whose talents were clearly underutilized. About patterns too familiar to be coincidence. We've turned around 5 restaurants in 3 years, Marcus continued. Made them profitable, made them better places to work. But we haven't really changed anything fundamental. You're thinking this one could be different? Marcus turned back to Aisha. I'm thinking about the fact that they have no idea who I am. No idea what I've built. They saw my skin and made assumptions. His voice remained calm, but determination had settled in his eyes. What if those assumptions became the starting point for transformation? It's business, not therapy, Aisha reminded him, though her tone suggested she already knew she wouldn't dissuade him. The best business decisions address real problems, Marcus replied. Their problem is a culture that alienates potential customers and wastes talent. That's fixable. He closed the folder decisively. Let's make an offer. Standard terms, but I want 2 conditions. Accelerated closing and complete confidentiality about the new ownership until I personally make the announcement. Aisha studied him for a moment, then nodded. You're not just buying a restaurant, are you? I'm buying an opportunity, Marcus said, to turn a moment of disrespect into something meaningful. The acquisition proceeded with surprising speed. Riverside Bistro's owners, facing mounting debt and dwindling prospects, accepted Marcus's fair but firm offer without extensive negotiation. By the following week, Marcus found himself sitting across from Richard Kent, the restaurant's general manager, in the empty dining room after hours. Richard, a man in his 50s with carefully maintained silver hair and an expensive watch, maintained a polished demeanor that didn't quite mask his discomfort at the situation. 30 years in the business, Richard said, straightening the already pristine silverware on the table between them. I've never seen a transfer happen this quickly. Sometimes efficiency is best for everyone, Marcus replied, observing how Richard avoided direct eye contact. I'd like to meet your staff before making any operational decisions. Richard's smile tightened. Of course, though I should warn you that our staff is particular. This isn't like one of those chain establishments. We have standards. The emphasis on standards wasn't lost on Marcus. He'd heard such coded language throughout his career. I'm familiar with standards, Mr. Kent, Marcus said evenly. I'm particularly interested in meeting your chef. The menu shows potential, but the execution needs refinement. Richard shifted in his seat. Antoine has technical skills, certainly, but he lacks the sophisticated palate for this caliber of establishment. I've had to maintain significant oversight of his menu development. Before Marcus could respond, the kitchen door swung open and a tall black man in chef's whites emerged. He stopped short upon seeing them. Sorry, I didn't realize anyone was still here, he said, his posture instantly becoming more guarded. Chef Antoine, Richard said with forced cordiality. This is the new owner I mentioned. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Marcus Daniels. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the current menu when you have time. Antoine's handshake was firm, his surprise at being consulted evident. I have plenty of thoughts, sir, and time right now if you do. Richard interjected smoothly. Antoine, Mr. Daniels has had a long day of paperwork. Perhaps another? Now. Works perfectly, Marcus interrupted, noting Richard's attempt to control the interaction. Mr. Kent will continue our conversation tomorrow. After Richard reluctantly departed, Antoine's professional reserve softened slightly. New owners usually start by replacing the chef. I start by understanding what I've purchased, Marcus countered, including untapped potential. As they talked, Marcus confirmed his suspicions. Antoine was classically trained at the Culinary Institute of America and had innovative ideas consistently overruled by management. The restaurant was underutilizing a significant asset. Their conversation was interrupted by a server entering to prepare for the next day, Emma, who froze upon seeing Marcus. Emma, right? Marcus said pleasantly. We'll be meeting with all staff tomorrow morning. Please spread the word that attendance is mandatory. She nodded mutely, her eyes darting between him and Antoine before she hurried away. That's the first time I've seen her speechless, Antoine remarked. Tomorrow will be interesting, Marcus replied, watching the door Emma had disappeared through. For everyone. The staff meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. before the restaurant. Opened for lunch service. Marcus arrived early, setting up in the main dining room where he could observe each person's entrance and reactions. He dressed deliberately today, a tailored charcoal suit that quietly announced his success without requiring verbal confirmation. Chef Antoine arrived first, nodding respectfully. Then came bartenders, line cooks, and servers, gathering in small clusters, casting curious glances toward Marcus. Richard entered with practiced confidence that faltered slightly when Marcus didn't rise to greet him. Emma slipped in last, her eyes fixed on the floor, positioning herself near the exit. Good morning, Marcus began once everyone had settled. I'm Marcus Daniels, the new owner of Riverside Bistro. Some of you may recognize me. His gaze briefly met Emma's before continuing. I visited as a customer last week. A murmur passed through the staff. Emma's face flushed deep red. My company, Daniels Hospitality Group, specializes in recognizing potential where others see only problems. Riverside has excellent bones but significant issues to address. Starting today, we implement new policies. Marcus outlined changes. A revised service protocol eliminating preferential table assignments, standardized script requirements for all customers, diversity in hiring, and a revamped menu highlighting Chef Antoine's vision. Throughout his presentation, he maintained a professional tone, never directly referencing the discrimination he'd experienced. Questions? He asked when finished. Silence hung heavily until Richard cleared his throat. With all due respect, these changes seem quite dramatic. Our clientele has certain expectations. Your clientele is declining by 23% annually, Marcus countered. Perhaps their expectations aren't being met. Our regulars appreciate tradition, Richard persisted. They're comfortable with familiar faces serving them. The application was clear. Marcus let the comment sit for a moment. Interesting perspective, he finally said. We'll test it against data rather than assumptions. Results, not traditions, will guide our decisions. As the meeting dispersed, Marcus noticed Emma lingering, her posture suggesting internal conflict. He approached her directly. Emma, a moment. She visibly steeled herself. Mr. Daniels, about last week. I'm not interested in apologies offered. From fear rather than understanding, Marcus interrupted gently. Your actions didn't define me. They revealed something about this environment. Tears welled in her eyes, more from shame than contrition. Are you firing me? Would that solve the actual problem? Marcus asked. I'm offering something more difficult than termination, the chance to be part of meaningful change. Whether you take it is your choice. In the kitchen, Marcus found Antoine meticulously organizing his station. They never took me seriously, Antoine said without preamble. 3 years proposing menu changes. 3 years hearing my food wasn't refined enough for their clientele. Their loss, Marcus replied. Now it's your kitchen. Show me what they've been missing. Later, Marcus overheard Richard speaking with Emma near the bar. He's on some social justice crusade, Richard muttered. It won't last. These places have natural hierarchies for a reason. Maybe, Emma replied uncertainly. But he didn't fire me when he had every reason to. Don't be naive, Richard scoffed. He's making a point. Once he's made it, things will go back to normal. Marcus stepped into view, his expression neutral. Normal is precisely what we're changing, Mr. Kent. I suggest embracing that reality quickly. He turned to Emma. Table 7 needs water, I believe. As they scattered to their duties, Marcus noted the divisions already forming among staff. Those resistant to change and those cautiously embracing it. The real work was just beginning. 2 weeks into Marcus's ownership, the resistance became more organized. Richard had mastered the art of malicious compliance, following directives to the letter while undermining their spirit. Table assignments were technically randomized, yet black customers mysteriously received delayed service. New hiring policies were implemented, but candidates of color were subjected to more rigorous quality control interviews. Marcus documented each incident meticulously, building his case without confrontation. He knew from experience that premature accusations would only entrench defensiveness. Emma's approach was different, passive rather than active resistance. She performed her duties adequately but without engagement, her interactions with Marcus minimal and guarded. He recognized the behavior. She was protecting herself, uncertain where she stood in the changing dynamic. On a busy Friday evening, Marcus observed from the host station as the restaurant operated at capacity. Antoine's revamped menu had attracted food critics and new customers, creating a buzz that boosted reservations. Despite Richard's predictions of failure, revenue was trending upward. Table for 4 under Williams, announced a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, a regular client from before the ownership change. Marcus checked the reservation system. Yes, Mr. Williams. Emma will be your server tonight. As Emma led the party to their table, Marcus noticed her tension. Later, while passing their table, he overheard fragments of conversation. Not the same place since that black fellow bought it, Williams was saying. Too many changes too fast. You know how they are, always pushing their agenda. Emma's face registered discomfort as she refilled water glasses. The clientele is changing too, Williams continued, gesturing toward a nearby table where a black family was dining. Used to have standards, Marcus watched Emma closely. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. The food has actually improved significantly. Chef Antoine has introduced some amazing new dishes, Williams snorted. Sure, but at what cost? This neighborhood has traditions. Emma glanced up, unexpectedly meeting Marcus's gaze across the room. Something passed between them. Recognition? Perhaps of the moment's weight. Later that night, after closing, Marcus found Emma counting her tips at the bar. Difficult table earlier, he commented, keeping his tone conversational. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. Mr. Williams is a good tipper, she said, though her expression suggested internal conflict. Conditional generosity often comes with the highest price, Marcus observed. Emma looked up, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. Why did you keep me on, after what I did? Because firing you wouldn't change anything except your employment status, Marcus replied. The real question is whether you're willing to examine why you laughed that day. I've never thought of myself as prejudiced, she said defensively. Few people do, Marcus noted. Yet we all absorb the messages our environment provides. The test is what we do once we recognize them. Emma was quiet for a long moment. I grew up in a town where everyone looked like me. This job was my first real exposure to diversity. She stumbled over the word. I think I've been following Richard's lead without questioning it. Awareness is the first step, Marcus said, but only the first. Emma nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Marcus asked gently. We'll see. A month later, the resistance had diminished but not disappeared. Richard maintained his undermining tactics, though with decreasing effect as more staff aligned with Marcus's vision. Emma occupied an uncertain middle ground, her behavior professional but her commitment unclear. The test came unexpectedly during Sunday brunch service. A group of executives from a local company arrived without reservations, expecting immediate accommodation. When Marcus explained the wait time, one man grew belligerent. Do you know who I am? He demanded loudly. I've been coming here for years. I understand your frustration, Marcus replied evenly, but we have a full reservation, booked today. I can offer you the bar while you wait, or take your number for our cancellation list. The man's face reddened. This place has gone downhill since you people took over. We never had to wait before. The racial undertone was unmistakable. Marcus maintained his composure. I apologize for the inconvenience, but our policy applies to all guests. Unbelievable, the man muttered, loud enough to be heard. Should have known better than to come back once it changed ownership. These people always ruin a good thing. Emma, passing with a tray of mimosas, stopped abruptly. Marcus noticed her, fingers tightening around the tray, her posture stiffening. Sir, she said, her voice surprisingly firm, if you can't speak respectfully to our owner, perhaps another restaurant would better meet your expectations. The man turned his anger toward her. You work for me, girl. I pay your bills with my business. Actually, Emma replied, Mr. Daniels pays my bills and he deserves your respect in his establishment. The executives departed, muttering threats about never returning. In the sudden quiet, Emma met Marcus's gaze, her expression a mix of surprise at her own boldness and uncertainty about his reaction. Thank you, Marcus said simply. Later during the afternoon lull, Emma found Marcus reviewing inventory sheets in the office. I've been thinking about that day when you left the tip, she said without preamble. I laughed because it confirmed what I'd been taught to expect, not because of anything you actually did. Marcus set down his pen. Expectations are powerful things. I judged you before you sat down, Emma continued. I saw your skin instead of your humanity. Then I watched you handle that situation today with more dignity than I could have managed. Her voice wavered. I'm sorry, truly. Apologies matter when they lead to change, Marcus said. What matters more is what happens next. Emma nodded. I want to be part of what you're building here, if you'll still have me. The door remains open, Marcus replied. The question is whether you're ready to walk through it. I am, Emma said. And for the first time, Marcus believed her. 6 months later, Riverside Bistro hosted a special event celebrating its transformation. Local business leaders, community members, and food critics gathered to experience what had become one of the city's most talked-about dining destinations. The restaurant had changed visibly. Subtle redesign elements brought warmth to the formerly austere space. The staff reflected the diverse community it served. Chef Antoine's innovative menu had earned regional recognition, blending classical techniques with influences from his Haitian heritage. Most significantly, the culture had transformed. Richard had departed 3 months earlier, unable to adapt to the new environment. Emma had developed into a floor manager, her natural leadership skills flourishing once freed from old constraints. As Marcus circulated among guests, he overheard a critic speaking with Emma. The change here is remarkable, the critic commented. What made the difference? Emma glanced across the room at Marcus. New ownership with a clear vision, and a willingness to see potential where others didn't bother looking. Later, after guests had departed, the staff gathered for their traditional end-of-shift meeting. Antoine presented his new seasonal menu concepts. Emma detailed service refinements. The atmosphere was collaborative rather than hierarchical. As the team dispersed, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey. The restaurant's success was measurable in revenue and reviews, but the deeper transformation existed in altered perspectives and opportunities created. Penny for your thoughts, Emma said, approaching with 2 glasses of wine. "Just appreciating how far we've come," Marcus replied, accepting the glass. "I've been thinking about that day when you first came in," Emma said. "How differently I see things now. How differently I see people." "Growth isn't comfortable," Marcus acknowledged, "but it's necessary. You could have fired me. You could have publicly humiliated me the way I did you." "And what would that have accomplished?" Marcus asked. "Revenge offers momentary satisfaction, but creates nothing lasting." They touched glasses in silent acknowledgement of the journey shared. The following week, Marcus visited a newly opened cafe across town. The young black server approached his table with visible nervousness, clearly new to the job. Marcus ordered simply and engaged her with kindness. When the check came, he left a tip that represented opportunity rather than obligation. 40% with a note. "Your service shows promise. Keep growing." As he departed, he noticed the server's expression of surprised gratitude. The cycle continued, small moments of recognition creating ripples of change, one interaction at a time.